Hey there, language explorers, and welcome back for another deep dive into Spanish.
That's right.
This time we're tackling introductions.
Ooh, getting right to the heart of conversation.
Exactly. Last time we did greetings.
Right.
This time it's introductions.
I like
So
it.
focusing on how to introduce yourself in Spanish.
Yeah, think of this deep dive as your cheat sheet to navigating those first few moments of a conversation like a pro.
Absolutely now. The source material for this episode is a Spanish language learning podcast from the Linguafinity Institute.
Yes, and it's hosted by Javi.
Of course.
He's a great teacher.
Yes, so let's jump right in.
Let's do it.
So the first thing you've got to master is asking someone their name in Spanish.
Obviously.
Javi points out that there are a few ways to do this,
Yeah.
each with a slightly different vibe.
Uh-huh.
So he starts with, ¿Cómo te llamas?
Right, and you can think of that as the casual, friendly way to ask someone their name.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you were just like, what's your name?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, for a more formal setting, like say you're meeting a professor or you're at a business meeting,
Right.
Javi suggests using, ¿Cuál es tu nombre?
Yeah, it's still polite,
Mm-hmm.
but just a touch more formal.
Yeah, it's like choosing the right outfit for the occasion.
Exactly.
Now, Javi throws in another phrase here, and this is where things get a little tricky.
Okay.
He says, ¿Quién eres?
Uh-huh.
Which literally means, who are you?
Right.
But before you go using this one, with every single person that you meet,
Yeah.
Javi emphasizes that this is not your typical introduction question.
Oh.
It's got a very specific use case.
Yeah, like if you were in a situation and you really needed to figure out someone's identity or role.
Yeah, or like questioning someone.
Yes.
Almost with some defensiveness.
Exactly.
It's like, who are you to be asking me that?
Right.
You wouldn't use this to just strike up a conversation at a cafe.
Definitely not.
So to avoid any awkward encounters,
Please.
we're going to stick with ¿Cómo te llamas?
Mhm.
Or ¿Cuál es tu nombre? For our everyday introductions.
Perfect.
So you've asked for their name.
Right.
Now it's your turn to share your own name.
Mm-hmm.
And Javi highlights the most common way, which is me llamo, followed by your name.
Simple, clear.
Yeah.
Gets the job done.
Like saying my name is in English.
Exactly.
But Javi, being the awesome teacher that he is, throws in some variations here.
Oh, nice.
So you can also use mi nombre es, very common,
Mm-hmm.
but might sound a tad more formal.
Okay.
Or soy, followed by your name,
Okay.
which has a more casual vibe.
So it's all about finding that style that feels right for you.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
What's that?
After that initial exchange of names, it's really important to show that you are actively engaged
Yes.
in the conversation.
Uh-huh.
And in Spanish, that's where y tú comes in.
Right.
Such a simple phrase,
Mm-hmm.
but just like in English, when we say and you,
Yeah.
it's that small gesture that really shows you're not just going through the motions.
Yeah.
You're trying to establish a connection.
Yes.
That back and forth,
Yeah,
that forms any good conversation.
for sure. Yeah, it shows you're genuinely interested in the other person.
Right now, to really seal the deal on that good first impression,
Uh-huh.
Javi introduces us to a key courtesy phrase.
Oh, yeah.
Encantado for men and encantada for women. You can think of this as the Spanish equivalent of like, nice to meet you.
Mm-hmm. Makes everything a bit warmer, bit more welcoming.
Right. But I noticed there's a little twist here.
Okay.
It's encantado versus encantada.
Oh, good catch.
What's that about?
So in Spanish, adjectives have to agree with the gender of the noun they describe.
Okay.
So in this case, you'd use encantado if you are a man
Okay.
and encantada if you're a woman.
So it's based on my gender,
Yeah,
not the person I'm meeting.
that's right.
Okay, good point to remember. How do you respond if someone says encantado or encantada to you? Do you like just say it back to them?
Yeah, you could totally mirror their phrase or, keep it simple with igualmente. It means likewise, polite, easy to remember.
Igualmente? I like that. Has a nice ring to it. Effortless.
Or you can mirror their sentiment and say encantado or encantada right back at them.
Okay, so we've got all the pieces of the introduction puzzle now. But, I think it'd be really helpful to actually see how this flows together in an actual conversation.
Yeah, me too.
And luckily, Javi provides us with a sample dialogue
Perfect.
in his episode.
Mm-hmm.
So let's break it down step by step.
Let's do it.
All right, so Javi kicks off the conversation with a simple, Hola, me llamo Javi.
Nice and easy.
Very straightforward and friendly.
Sets a nice casual tone.
And then the other person responds with, Hola, Javi, soy Anayan.
They use the name right away.
Yes. Immediately establishes that personal connection.
You don't just say encantado. It's encantado, Anna. It's like you were listening adds a touch of warmth.
So it's almost like, hey, I heard you, I see you, and I'm happy to meet you, Manna.
Exactly. You're personalizing it, showing you're really engaged, not just going through the motions.
And hey, it might even help me remember her name later. Always a plus.
That's a great point. It's subtle, but it can make all the difference in a first impression.
It's amazing how these little things can have such a big impact. Now, Javi responds with, Encantado, Ana.
Using the name again.
Yes.
Reinforcing that connection.
And he uses Encantado because he is a man.
Yes.
And then Ana closes the introduction with Encantada, Javi. Feminine form because she's a woman. And of course saying his name again.
Yeah.
Wow. That was such a smooth exchange.
I know, right?
I feel like I could walk into a cafe in Madrid right now and strike up a conversation with total confidence.
You and me both.
Let's imagine you're at a party in Spain.
All right.
You spot someone you'd like to chat with.
Okay.
What's the first thing you do?
Well, you wouldn't just launch into your life story, right?
Yeah.
That's where Presentarse comes in.
Okay.
It's all about introducing yourself directly to someone, making that initial connection. But there's also Introducirse.
Okay.
Which is more about introducing yourself within a specific context.
So like if you were joining a Spanish conversation class for the first time.
Yeah.
That would be Introducers.
Exactly. It's about establishing your presence in a new environment.
I'm starting to see the difference.
Good.
So how do these concepts actually play out in real-life Spanish conversations?
Let's look at a typical introduction scenario.
Okay.
Javi, our expert guide for this deep dive, breaks down these interactions into a helpful roadmap.
Perfect.
He highlights that these conversations usually follow a 6-step pattern.
Okay.
Let's say you want to introduce yourself to someone named Maria.
All right, let's walk through it.
Sounds good.
Step 1, the greeting. You'd probably start with a friendly hola, or maybe what his start is, depending on the time of day. You'd ask for their name.
Yeah.
Something like, ¿Cómo te llamas?
Exactly.
Okay, so far so good.
Yeah.
Then step 3, you tell her your name, maybe with a me llamo your name, and then ask her back with a you too.
Right on.
And Maria would respond with her name.
Yeah.
Now here comes a key step that often trips up language learners.
Oh.
You need to express your pleasure in meeting her.
So this is where that politeness factor comes in.
Right.
You can't just say, okay, cool, and move on.
Exactly. In step 5, you'd say, mucho gusto, Maria, or encantado, Maria, conveying that you're delighted to meet her.
That's a really nice touch. I can see how that would make the introduction feel warmer and more genuine.
Yeah.
So what's the final step?
Step 6 is all about wrapping things up.
Okay.
You might say hasta luego or adios to bid farewell.
Okay, that makes sense. But I'm guessing there's some room for flexibility within this 6-step structure, right?
Yeah.
It can't be this robotic every single time.
You're right. We're not talking about a rigid script here.
Okay.
Like Javi points out, there's room for variation, especially in the greetings and farewells.
So you might use more casual greeting like ¿Qué tal? With someone you meet at a party.
Right. Now I have a confession to make.
Ooh, what's that?
I am actually notorious for messing up names, especially in those first meeting jitters.
Yeah.
One time I completely blanked on someone's name
Oh.
and ended up calling them the wrong name for like the entire evening.
Oh, no.
So awkward.
I think we've all been there.
Yeah, it just highlights how crucial these introductions are.
Right. Getting the name right, using the right level of formality,
Yeah.
it all contributes to creating that comfortable and respectful atmosphere for a conversation.
Absolutely. And like Javi says, the key is to practice these phrases
Yes.
until they become second nature.
Exactly.
So that when you're in the moment, you can focus on the actual interaction,
Right.
not scrambling for the right words.
You got it.
So as Javi teases in his episode,
Uh-huh.
mastering these basic introductions is really just the first step.
Yeah, the foundation.
From there, it's all about building on that foundation to explore more complex and fascinating elements of the Spanish language. And the interesting thing is, even though these introductory conversations follow a general structure, they never feel stiff or impersonal.
For sure.
There's still a lot of room for personal expression and warmth.
Yeah.
Speaking of personal expression,
Okay.
Javi encourages his students to recreate these conversations using situations from their own lives.
I see.
He wants them to imagine themselves in different scenarios and practice what they would actually say.
That's awesome.
That's a fantastic way to make the learning process more engaging and relevant.
It is.
It's about moving beyond textbook examples and applying this knowledge to real-world interactions.
Exactly.
I love that Javi encourages that kind of active practice.
Yeah. It's not just about memorizing phrases.
Right.
It's about imagining yourself in those situations and feeling confident to navigate them.
Absolutely. And one thing I find fascinating is that this 6-step structure, even with its flexibility,
Highlights a key difference between Spanish and English introductions.
Oh, I'm curious about that.
Okay.
What stands out to you?
Well, in English, we often jump straight to nice to meet you,
Right.
which can be a bit perfunctory.
Yeah.
But in Spanish, there's that deliberate step of expressing your pleasure at meeting the person.
You mean with phrases like mucho gusto?
Exactly. It adds a layer of warmth and sincerity that might not always be as explicit in English interactions.
That makes me think about how cultural values can be embedded in even the simplest conversations.
Yeah.
It's like those phrases are carrying a subtle message about the importance of connection and politeness in Spanish culture.
That's a brilliant observation, and I think it's a key takeaway for anyone learning a new language.
Yeah.
It's not just about the words themselves, it's about understanding the cultural context.
Because it's not just about memorizing lines. It's about understanding the flow of a real conversation.
Right. And that's where it becomes less about following a rigid structure and more about feeling the rhythm and improvising.
Exactly. It's like learning a dance. You need to know the steps, but then you have to feel the music and move with it.
Perfectly said. And the more you practice, the more confident you'll become in adapting those introductions and making them your own.
It's amazing how much depth there is to something as seemingly simple as an introduction.
Isn't it? It's a reminder that language is so much more than just words. It's a window into culture and human connection.
Absolutely. And speaking of delving deeper, in our next episode, we're going to be exploring another fascinating aspect of the Spanish language. Numbers.
Oh, numbers.
Yes, numbers.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, numbers can be tricky in any language, but I have a feeling Professor Javi from our Source podcast has found a way to make it fun.
Oh, I love when learning is fun. What's he done?
Get this. In episode 3 of Deep Dive Spanish with Javi Correa, he's actually created a song to help learners master Spanish numbers.
A song. That's brilliant. I'm already hooked.
I know, right? It's such a creative approach. It speaks to the power of music in language learning.
It's like those catchy jingles we used to learn the alphabet or multiplication tables as kids.
Exactly. It's like Javi has given us a new set of glasses to see the world with.
Uh.
We can now appreciate the subtle beauty of Spanish introductions.
Right.
And at the same time, we're inspired to examine our own communication habits with a fresh perspective.
And that, I think, is the true power of this deep dive.
Yeah.
It's not just about learning a few phrases in another language. It's about expanding our understanding of human connection and the intricate ways we communicate across cultures.
So to our listeners, we leave you with this challenge.
Okay.
Take a moment to observe the next time you introduce yourself.
Yeah.
Or witness an introduction in your own language. What are the unspoken steps? What are the subtle cues and cultural nuances at play?
Yeah.
You might be surprised by what you discover. Until next time, keep exploring, keep connecting, and keep those conversations flowing.